Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good dark topic today, so be warned. Let's do it. What's something that you stumbled across online that has scarred or scared you for life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I watched a video of a child attempting a running jump from some railings into the sea. Regrettably, the child slipped on the railing and couldn't clear a concrete jetty below. It seemed like he hit the corner edge face first. The video then transitioned to showing his body floating face down in the water, followed by footage from the hospital where doctors were working to stabilize his injured face while he was still conscious. I've never been able to forget that. The incident where a guy was turned into red mush by a lathe machine was especially unsettling for me, considering that I work with these machines. It was quite a shocking experience. The teenagers who murdered a man in Ukraine filmed the incident and were seen slowly stabbing him while laughing about it. Other people have been discussing gore, murder, and suicide, so my comment might seem a bit silly in comparison. However, I stumbled upon this Reddit page one day without knowing what it was about. As I began scrolling, I noticed that people were sharing pictures of their prolapsed assholes and taking pride in it. Ugh. It seemed like they were competing to see whose prolapse was more extreme. I can't fully explain it, but it deeply disgusted me, and the memory of it still bothers me today. But you were there. It takes a little bit for me to be like, ugh, out loud, but that's one. And again, with all due respect, you had every option and opportunity to not click on that, but you did. I'm not scared, but I'm scarred for life after stumbling upon CP images 20 years ago while working for a web hosting company. A client had submitted a support request because their site was only displaying an error message. They were running a script on their site which had been exploited, and their website was unknowingly being used to share the content. You might think you understand how terrible CP is, but seeing it is far worse than you can imagine. You don't know the identities of these individuals, the timelines of these events, whether it ever ceased, if justice was served, or if these people are still alive. I can't recall how I stumbled upon a bug chaser forum, but they were discussing methods to transmit STDs and hosting parties where they intentionally tried to contract HIV. I couldn't stop reading it for most of the night after discovering it, desperately hoping it was fake. It significantly disturbed me for a while. Cartel torture and death, especially when they use a dull knife to behead their victims, is shocking. It's astonishing how much brutality and murder is perpetrated by these individuals. In the initial days of the Ukraine invasion, I came across a video depicting a father and son inside their car being struck by bullets. The father ended up on his back in the road attempting to rise but unable to do so, while his son called out to him. Tragically, both of them lost their lives. However, the desperation and fear in the father's voice continue to haunt me. When I was maybe 9, I stumbled on a video of a woman in heels slowly stomping a kitten to death. I will never get the image of her sticking her stiletto into its eyeball out of my head. I've since dedicated my life to fixing animals, and I foster several litters of kittens every year. Makes me feel a bit better about it. Pro-anorexia communities. Just watching people actively supporting each other's starvation was awful, and their extreme hostility towards people who were reaching out to help them was heartbreaking. I was in high school when this concept popped up over the internet for the first time. They would use terms like pro-ana and pro-mia, or the names Anna and Mia for pro-anorexia and pro-bulimia related content. I remember finding this blog hosted on GeoCities in which the owner, a girl in her late teens, posted all types of entries explaining how Anna was her best friend and how she had made a pact with her. She would give tips on how to fool concerned adults and family members at home, or how to pretend eat when going to a restaurant. Something that shocked me was the suggestion she made of sucking on wet cotton balls to trick your brain into thinking you were eating, and also to keep yourself hydrated. It was really sad to read, but the worst part were the comments others posted. They were all enthusiastic and supportive, and saccharine sweet. You could tell that those who interacted with her were really into the whole pro-Anna, pro-Mia thing, not just internet trolls. I still wonder to this day what happened to that girl. I was there before the internet had any kind of filter. Videos about mutilation, murder, etc. were all over the place. I will always remember a video where a guy had his testicles nailed to a table. His screams were really haunting. My uncle's house, which he had lived in until his passing, went unnoticed for at least 6 weeks. When we entered the house, we weren't sure what to anticipate. Fortunately, by that time, his remains had already been removed. However, there was a prominent outline on the carpet where he had passed, and the smell was something I will always remember. Sometime during those 6 weeks, the house was burglarized and my uncle's pickup truck was stolen from the garage. I genuinely hope those responsible individuals face the consequences they deserve. I was scrolling through Facebook while my boyfriend at the time was playing games on the other side of the room. I came across a video with hidden content. To this day, I still don't know why or how this video ended up on my Facebook feed. It was from a page I wasn't following, but being the curious person I am, I decided to find out why the content was hidden. In the video, a woman had tethered her 2 German Shepherd dogs to a wall. I have a German Shepherd that I adore, and then got into her car, slowly running them over. The yelps, squeals, and cries of those poor dogs still haunt me. I immediately closed the video and burst into tears. My boyfriend came over confused. I explained what I had just seen and he comforted me for the entire day. Images of it still pop into my head from time to time, and I have to distract myself with something else. It was horrific, and it makes my blood boil that anyone would do such a thing, let alone record and post it online. These days, I don't let my curiosity get the best of me. Some cartel video where a guy was punished by having his heart cut out. I went on a gore trip, and that one ended the adventure. Another one where an argument happened at a mall and the guy got sliced with a knife in just the right way where it hit his jugular. Didn't even know how bad he was cut until a few seconds and all the blood was flowing that he collapsed and probably died. Like 20 years ago, I was pretty young. My uncle was friends with a guy who was an Army Ranger sniper. He had a video of headshotting a guy in the Middle East during the war following 9/11. They were up in some mountains. The sniper was using a 50 cal, and you just see this guy's head utterly explode. It didn't really scare or scar me for life, but I always remember how scarring the imagery was. That, and seeing the decapitation during the same time period, I no longer click on such videos. This was on my Twitter feed and I have no clue why it appeared there, and why the person I was following at the time retweeted it. It was CP, and it was a video of a very young girl, and I'll leave it at that. The minute I realized what was going on, I reported the post, reported the person who retweeted it and the original poster, and unfollowed the same person who retweeted it. The video was being portrayed as a joke, but the contents of what was staring to take place were absolutely no joke at all. I just felt really bad after witnessing that video, and it still makes me sad when I think about it. So this brings up an interesting topic of debate. Would you rather have a completely uncensored internet, or something more moderated, or something very moderated? Right, kind of in the middle. I think anything illegal, child-based, or people that have horrible accidents that haven't given permission to show that video should be protected. But otherwise, First Amendment maybe? What do you think? Arthur Labinjo Hughes, a little boy who was killed by his parents. There was a video from the security camera in his house of him trying to make up a little bed for himself while sobbing that no one loved him and no one would feed him. Even now, just thinking about it, I'm in pieces again. If I could erase anything from my memory, it'd be that poor little boy's sobs. There's a lot on here about cartel videos. If I could hand over the baby's parents to them, I'll watch whatever happened to them with pleasure. I've seen a lot of stuff online back in the day, but only one thing really ever struck with me. It was about 25 years ago, and I was probably around 14. There was a dog laying on the ground wagging its tail, and suddenly, without warning, its lower jaw was blown off by a shotgun. The video was longer, but I recoiled and shut it off immediately. I've seen beheadings, suicides, and people blown apart, and it never bothered me. That video always stuck with me, and I wince every time I think about it. I won't call it an accident. When I was 11 years old, I used to watch horror films like it was nothing, and my stupid, arrogant mind told me to search for something more cruel. I googled the most cruel torturing method, found it lame. I kept searching until I found a woman torturing her child, a 4-year-old. I was traumatized to know such people exist. It's funny how I thought torturing in general was something lame that needs creativity. I used to be a scary child for my grown self. I unfortunately was just old enough to use the fledgling World Wide Web without supervision, and young enough to be not doing anything of the sort. As a 16-year-old metalhead, I saw things on Rotten, Steak and Cheese, and other sites that still randomly flash into my mind's eye 30 years later. There were a lot of things about the modern internet that pissed me off, but sites like that going down or becoming really underground is not a bad thing. The worst thing I've seen were cartel videos. One video depicted a person having their face skinned while being pumped full of drugs to keep them conscious and in excruciating pain. It's unclear whether the victim was innocent or a cartel member, but no one deserves such torment. In another video, a man's face was set on fire. I heard that he had been tortured for 2 days before this gruesome act. The victim in this case was a cartel boss. There's also a video where a man is dismembered and he repeatedly screams, "No more." Additionally, there's a video of another skinning, where the victim remains eerily silent, only calmly uttering, "Don't step on me, dude." The internet hosts a plethora of disturbing content, and it makes me wonder if anything worse than cartel videos exist. People can be scarier than monsters. A cop responding to a man with psychotic episode. The man reached for the cop with a knife. Cop shot him in the neck. The dude was crying, gurgling blood, and saying he's sorry. Kinda traumatized me. When I was a young teenager, my dad purchased and restored a car from the 60s. This led him to adopt an American picker style, scouring junkyards and remote locations for rare car parts. I accompanied him once to a man living just outside of town who owned extensive storage buildings. Some of these structures contained World War II surplus items and other fascinating collectibles. While they explored the compound, I ventured off on my own. In one particularly large storage building, I discovered it was arranged like a meeting hall, complete with a stage. On the stage, an American flag and a Confederate flag were displayed. The walls featured pictures that were initially unclear from a distance, prompting me to approach for a closer look. To my shock, I realized these were paintings of KKK knights. As I scrutinized my surroundings, it became evident that KKK paraphernalia surrounded me. I had unintentionally stumbled into an actual Ku Klux Klan meeting hall. In a hurry, I left the building and took a different route back to my dad and his companion, avoiding any connection to the hall's location. I eventually confided in my dad as we departed, and he was understandably disturbed. He cautioned me to keep the encounter to myself, fearing potential repercussions. I also observed a picture that likely depicted the members recognizing several prominent men from our hometown. I chose not to disclose this detail to my dad. He shared valuable life advice about interacting with people and recognizing that not everyone is virtuous, and I absorbed his wisdom. Years later, I saw the same man featured in an episode of American Pickers as they explored his compound. Interestingly, they were guided around the property in a manner that avoided the building I had stumbled upon. To this day, the memory continues to unsettle me, akin to finding oneself in an extremely uncomfortable situation, like straying too far from a boat and realizing that there are sharks circling nearby. So they had this person on a TV show, and he had a meeting hall for a hate group, and they didn't go in there? Shocking. I accidentally watched a woman hit a baby for crying over and over on Facebook years back. I haven't been right since. My eyes fill up with tears when I look at my daughter sometimes because I could never imagine hurting an innocent human being like that. Obviously, there's a lot of gore and stuff like that, but the one thing for me that sticks out is when one of my best friends committed suicide. She had an online diary type Instagram account where she would talk about stuff, and after she passed, I went through and looked at all the time she said she felt hopeless and alone. I guess I took her seriously at the time because I almost always messaged or called, but I still feel like I could have done more. I just didn't know what I know now, and every time I see an old memory pop up of us together, it makes me think of it. Digging up that trauma again, there's a podcast called Darknet Diaries that I used to listen to. They have some episodes in which they explicitly give a clear CN for violence and CA. Please take this sentence as one as well. I can't recall what the episode was about 100%, literally traumatized, but it must have been about CP. They mention a video that came up in the darknet that supposedly shows a couple torturing and beating a baby to death with a hammer, and then ripping it in half lengthwise to pillow fight each other with the bloody corpse while laughing about it, somewhere in Southeast Asia. The description alone was enough for me to be haunted in my dreams for months, especially now that I have a little son myself.